have a lot of digging out to do.
You park your vehicle in the. Do you have a covered parking, or do you park it outside on the driveway?
Yeah, my car's in a garage, and my motorcycle's in a garage, but there's two other cars in the driveway.
Oh, okay.
You know, one is my son's and one is his girlfriend's. So.
Gotcha. So I
Not a
used
big
to,
driveway.
I
It's
used to
only
live.
about 7 meters long.
Gotcha.
So I guess Greg is here. Good morning, Greg.
Morning, guys. How are you?
You're doing great.
Good. Hey, John, how much snow did you get last night?
We got about 12 or 13 inches.
Yeah, we got about the same.
I shoveled last night. It was about 8 to 9 inches. And then by the time I woke up, it looks like we got another 4 or 5 inches on top of that.
Wow. Yeah, it's a lot of snow.
I was thinking of going skiing today, so let's get on with the call.
Perfect.
I used to live in Chicago, and that's where I got the first snow of my life. And my car was parked in the driveway, and it snowed, and we were enjoying. Like, it was the first experience of snow, so we enjoyed. And we didn't know that we had to like shovel it before it settled down. So by the time the snowfall ended and we slept off in the morning, we had like a huge sheet of snow on top of the car. Actually it solidified into ice. So it was a lot of effort to do that, to remove the ice from the car.
Yeah, the best thing is to do it in stages the way John did. Take off, as it falls, you take more off and more off and more off, and it ends up being pretty easy at the end.
Yeah, learned it the hard way. All right, so we just saw your questions regarding the SRS on Slack. I don't know how much Binu or Milind got a chance to read through, but let us utilize this meeting for going over those questions, getting them clarified. I know that Greg, you wanted one item to be added to the milestones, to the current phase. So, hey Binu, do you want to start off with the questions, or do you want John to throw the questions at you?
Anyway, it's fine, Ajesh. I just had a quick look at the questions, and I have answers for most of them.
Great. So then let's
Well,
go ahead.
I think I can go through them item by item, and I think some of them we just need to. I mean, I don't want to dwell on each one in detail, but I think if we can identify whether, oh yeah, this is something that we have to actually document in the spec, that's one answer. Another one is this belongs somewhere else, like in a style guide or in a technical spec. It might not really be part of what you would consider part of the software spec. And then the third option, I think, is that we'll determine that it is something we need and it needs to be spec'd out or written up, and whether it's this phase or a future phase. So I think if we can triage these things that way, it'll save us some time and we'll have a much better understanding. That way you guys don't have to get into detail to a response. We just need to have a consensus on where these things go, if it's critical, if it's part of it, if it's in scope, etc. So if that sounds good, I'll just start by stepping through the items.
That sounds good. Binu, does that sound okay to
Yes.
you? Or yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's okay. It's okay.
Got it.
Okay, so the first is if we look at the spec in section 1.2, there's a specific item in, I think it's the fourth bullet point. It says REST APIs are going to connect the mobile apps to the back end. That really just kind of led me to question, how is the website and web-based apps going to talk to the back end? Are they going to use the same APIs?
Right now, what I have planned for the website and the web application is that they will be, since they are part of the same system or the server. We don't need actually a REST APIs. We can directly get the data from the controllers, and we can pass it to the view section for rendering. Instead of going for a REST API implementation, which is a bit tricky one, we can directly get the data from the controllers and we can implement it directly. If you require to implement it using web APIs, that is also fine for us.
Well, my concern is more long-term,
Okay.
because if we are to make a difference in the interface for a particular database request, a query perhaps or something, it would seem that that would then require modifications to both the APIs and whatever you're using in the web stack.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if there's value and in maintaining everything through the REST APIs, so that in the future, if you have to make a change to the API in some way, to that interface or the way it behaves, you're only really dealing with it in one spot.
Okay.
If there's a specific reason for you to separate it for performance, which there probably would be a performance benefit to keeping the web apps off of the REST APIs. But like, what's the trade-off there? So if that's something you can address, the next time we talk,
John, if you are going for the REST API, then it will take some load of the web server to a web application. So implementing using the REST APIs is good for distributing the load. Since we are using, if we are going for a web view or a view, then it is taking the load to the server for rendering the views, getting the data from the controllers, and all the HTML rendering will be done on the server side before throwing it to the browser. So if you are using a REST API, you will be getting the just data as a JSON response from the web server, and all the rendering is taken part by the React or the Angular side. So it will distribute the load to two servers or to the client. So
yeah, and I guess that is your preferred way to keep the web app accessing the data layer on its own? Is that the way you build most of your applications?
It depends on the client requirement. Actually, we can use REST APIs as well as directly getting the data from the controllers. Since we are having a mobile backend, a mobile front end, and we need to develop the REST API. So it is better to go with the same API for rendering the data on the web also. Anyway, we are creating the web
Yeah,
API, so we can use it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. If there are some very data intensive calls that generate views on the web, such as if you're doing a search query, I can see that you would want to avoid the REST API because that's a lot of data. You may want to use a cursor if you're doing data binding, things of that nature. So I can see that a hybrid use, but I think that from the spec perspective, we should consider using REST APIs across both platforms, mobile and web, as much as possible.
Okay, agreed. Ajish, we will document that in the SRS, and we can implement, because anyway we are creating the REST APIs, so it is not an issue with our side.
The second item is regarding the CMS module. I'm just kind of curious, is this a custom module, or are you going to be building it on a third party or plugin type platform?
It will be a custom built one, and it will not be having much functionalities. Only my intention is to allow the admin to change the core pages like the about us, the contact us, and all. So we will be providing some fields for inputting those fields. Uh, it will be a
Okay, very
minimal
good.
CMS for managing the content. Yeah, usually you will have a text box for key in the title, some meta descriptions, meta titles, each will have its own field. Then you can manage the HTML content using a editor.
Okay. The other thing under section 1.2 is the notifications. It doesn't mention anything specifically about SMS notifications. This is on page.
Okay.
It says push messages and emails. My presumption was that SMS should be identified as a future scope item. Greg mentioned that he thinks that's part of the current, that he wants to build that in also. So Greg, I want to first clarify, the difference between SMS and push notifications from an app. Are you looking actually to do text messaging?
Well, text messages, if you don't have a native application set up on your, the answer is yes. Some people will not have notifications set up as a native app on their phones, in which case the only way they're going to get immediate notifications from us is going to have to be SMS or texts. So I think we need to have both native apps, native notifications available, and SMS. So I don't want to miss anybody by not having that. And they're different between, SMS is for Androids is the way that different from the way texts and native apps come through, or notifications come through on iPhone. So I need to make sure that we're covered on at least both those devices. And if you don't have, notifications set up, we still want you to get the bulletins when we send them out. Those are supposed to be real time. Like, if, for example, there was a squash tournament a couple of days ago, and we were talking in the locker room of the club how neat it would be if the person in charge of squash, the squash site, the squash portal on the site, sent out a bulletin to everybody saying, hey, the finals of the Qatar tournament are starting in 10 minutes. And to me, that's a really cool thing that I've been talking about for years, actually. So I'd like to see us be able to do that across all devices. So
Okay.
I think the real-time notifications on all devices is important.
Okay, Greg and John, that is possible, but only restriction is that we will have to get the user phone number also to be keyed in while getting the profile details.
Right.
So we will be, that is only field that is attached to this requirement. So
we have to
unless
ask
he
that at the
has
first
not
or second level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
What
we
about
have to decide on what all events we will have to send the SMS, because sending an SMS is actually a costlier stuff, because we will have to use a third-party API like a Twilio or something, and it will have a cost attached to it. So we'll have to decide on which all events or triggers we will have to send the SMS.
Yeah, and I think from our side, Greg currently doesn't have an SMS messaging provider, so we would have to look to see who we would engage with to do that fulfillment, which would steer what APIs and how you would even interact with that system.
Okay.
Yeah,
John,
we'll do our
one
research.
thing.
I can do our research.
Yeah, John,
The-
one thing you should
the
have
other-
in mind is that if you're targeting multiple countries, it will have an international SMS cost attached to it. So just keep that one also in your mind.
Right. And the other thing is, Greg, I think you and I should have an offline discussion about the need for SMS. To count on that, if someone has their notifications for an app off, to me, the answer is that you encourage them to turn the notifications on.
Yeah, sure. That would be the first choice. No question.
So I'm questioning, number one, the effort. This is why I thought SMS would be a future item. So you and I should discuss this offline. Benu, I think from your perspective, you're correct about taking the numbers, the international flavor. There's other requirements in getting people to opt in. I'm not convinced that this is something that we have the ability to invest our time in. So Greg and I are going to have to talk about this a little further. So from your perspective, just for now, note that it's future scope or something that we need to discuss it further as to whether it's going to be in this scope or not. And we'll follow up with you to get back on that. Because I think we have to hash out a few things on our side to see how critical this is and whether it really satisfies what we need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be one of the benefits of membership is that we provide a native app for the users as opposed to an SMS. So yeah, let's have a discussion.
So, okay. Moving on, page 14 mentions the forgot password functionality. My question is that you're going to use some kind of a token or GUID in the link that they use to come back and reset their password. The question I have is, how long will that link or those tokens be valid? I think that amount of time should be configurable. I don't think we have to specify that now, but as long as that's a configurable parameter as to how long those links last. And additionally, that raised a question in my mind about the password. And do you have a standard way of implementing password syntax and security? In other words, do you retain 3 passwords and they have to always pick a new one? Personally, I hate those kind of requirements. But what is the norm for your password implementations regarding syntax and security?
Right now, we are keeping all the passwords in the database as encrypted. I mean, we are using the MD5 hash for storing the password. So there is only one way of encryption. So you can't decrypt it. So each time you enter or key in the login password, we will be encrypting that thing and we will be comparing it with the database. That is the way we are using it.
Yeah, I think John was asking more about the password policies. John usually depends on clients' internal IT policies on how the the password formats are decided. So we can choose any of the standard, say Google's standard or an Apple standard of password maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, we can review those later. It sounds like that's more of something that the technical team will hash out with us when the time comes. That would be more of a technical spec as far as how we're validating passwords as well as other data. Would you agree with that?
Sure. We will be definitely glad to consult with you on the on the process. But as Binu has explained, that's the most common way of encrypting passwords in the database. We can
Okay.
brainstorm over it when we are there. So Binu,
Yeah, Greg, I'm gonna
Binu, in that,
add
let's
password
add.
policies to our list of offline things to discuss regarding
Okay.
privacy and terms and some other things like that.
Yeah, I was just writing that down. We do have to go through that ourselves. All right.
Okay.
Sure. So Binu, we will have to get those policies from John and add it back into the SRS whenever
Okay.
ready.
Okay.
They're ready. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, John, then regarding the forgot password, we'll be using a concept of tokens, and that tokens will be valid only for one click. So if you have clicked that link and if that link is opened in browser and second click will not render, at that time we will invalidate that token. Then we can certainly set the token expiry time also for that. And that can
Okay.
be configured from the admin backend. So we will be using the same concept for all the email links. So all such links can only be clicked once.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good.
Binu, can we
Um,
specify that in the forgot password section?
Yeah, sure, Ajay, sure. Same will apply for all the email links we are sending it, because we don't want to make the user click again and go through the same process if he has already done it. Something like the parental approval, reset password, sign up verification, everything will be only clickable or activated once only. And everything will be using the same token concept. And it cannot be easily regenerated because it will have a timestamp attached to it.
Gotcha.
all right. I'm not so sure that I agree with that for every link that you send. For example, the link that you send to verify your email address after you sign up, if that can only be clicked once, you're subjecting a user who has signed up. They click it once, they say, oh, I don't want to fill this out right now. They don't really have a way to get back
Okay,
to
got it.
verify. All right, so I'm not sure that the word all
Yeah,
is
got it.
appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to define that based on the specific purpose of the links, as we go forward.
Yeah, sure.
So it'll have to be variable in some way.
Mhm.
Okay, moving forward on page 20, it talks about the admin dashboard. And it says that for user management, we can add and delete users and their permissions. We need the ability to disable a user account without deleting it.
Okay,
There may
John.
be.
Yeah, John. Please
I'm
proceed.
presuming, number one, let's back up a second. I'm presuming that if I delete a user account, that it's really a flag. You're not actually deleting those records from the database. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Because if you are deleting the database, it is actually a chain reaction. All the information related to that particular user ID has to be deleted, and it is a huge process when compared to a database operation. And
Yeah,
if we
correct.
need
I
to
understand.
if we need to audit in some way, something like in any security breaches or any, suppose the FBI comes in and asks, suppose I want to get the user details of a particular user. If we delete it from the database, then there is no way of retrieving it. So if you are flagging it as a soft delete method, then we can easily retrieve it from the admin side. So all the
Okay, then,
delete operations will be actually a soft delete.
okay. We also need the ability to disable a user's account.
Okay.
And this would be a different status, if you will, than delete. A delete means that person has asked us to remove their data, to cancel their account, etc. But the disable function could be if we chose to ban a user account from the site because of inappropriate content, or some other inappropriate behavior. We find out that someone has a child, for example, has lied about their age and didn't get parental approval. We would want to be able to identify these separately than being just a deleted account. So we do need some sort of a disable status.
Okay.
That would also
can be
allow
provided
disabled.
from admin. That can be provided from the admin.
Yeah. The delete function specifically would prevent a user from trying to log in. If someone used that same email address and password, it's going to say that it doesn't exist, but a disabled user may get a separate message saying that their account has been disabled. Please contact our customer service or something like that. So that's the business need for having that status. So we'll need to add that to the spec.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
So
Yeah,
those are my
it's clear,
specific
John.
comments regarding the SRS itself. The rest of the items that I listed are things that I think need to be specified somewhere. And I'm not sure if the SRS is the appropriate place or if there will be a technical spec or a style guide, for example. So these items, the first, and we discussed this on our last call, was the use of breadcrumb navigation in addition to a menu. So if we can get that into the SRS,
Yes.
that'll identify that we're using that.
Okay. Yes, we can do that.
The next item is that we want the site to use friendly URLs as much as possible.
Yes, John, it will be there because that supports a lot of SEO efforts.
Right. Does.
Correct. Will the friendly URLs be manageable through the CMS?
You mean you want to change the URLs?
Potentially, it allows it to be configurable. So for example, the About Us page or the privacy policy, which is the most common. We might want the URL to be /privacy. At some point in the future, we might want it to be /privacy policy. And it would be nice if that's configurable via the CMS by an admin.
John, yes, that can be provided. There will be no issues. We'll be defining a concept called flag, like what we do in the case of a WordPress. That can be done.
Okay. Mobile apps, moving on, mobile apps will need to employ deep linking so that we can have ads that can take someone into a deep linked page within the app.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, John. But we haven't considered that in current scope. We'll have to enable deep linking and handle all those deep links with URLs or push notifications.
Is there going to be
Okay.
additional effort, Milan?
Yeah, actually, it requires some effort because we'll have to depend on custom service like branch.io or something for generating the URLs or sharing the content. And this can be shared throughout. I mean, this can be shared anywhere in the internet, and upon clicking, it can be redirected to, I mean, our app or the site.
My question, let me rephrase it. Is it going to be a
Yeah.
significantly larger effort, which will affect our timelines, or can we squeeze them into
Yeah,
our?
I guess that might affect our timeline. It's not a thing with which requires a huge effort, but it requires a like a medium effort because we'll have to handle deep links for many scenarios. I guess it's not going to be one or two, right? So it can be that needs handling. I guess that's my yeah comment about that.
John, do you think this
What's your
is?
suggestion, John?
Yeah.
I think my concern right now is I understand that it does take some time to work that in. I would agree that it might extend the scope and perhaps the time, but I'm not sure of how immediate our need is for that. Greg and I would need to kind of talk that through a little bit. I don't see that there's going to be a large immediate need to do that kind of thing.
Another question.
So
Milan.
what I would like to ask is, can you schedule a separate meeting with Greg and I to kind of give an idea so that you can present to Greg kind of what deep linking is and how it would be advantage to have in the site. I think like if you can do like a half-hour overview to do that, how you've implemented it with other sites and other clients of yours.
Okay. Do you? I can brief that for you right now itself, or else we can have it in another call.
Milan, let's go get some working examples on screen share so that Greg gets it like spot on, rather than just explaining it verbally.
Yeah, guys, but I'm on my mobile. I can't actually.
Yeah. So that's why let's schedule another meeting for specifically for that.
Yes.
My question is, if we skip this for now, will we be able to implement that in a later phase, or will that be a lot of rework?
No, I don't think so. See, but for Greg and John, I'll just tell one or two sentences about deep linking. So deep linking can be done like mostly in two ways. I mean, the purpose. When you receive an push notification, right? Upon clicking that push notification, you can directly go into a specific page inside the app.
Sure.
Okay. So normally push notifications will just launch the app. Suppose you are getting a push notification for an event. Okay. Upon clicking the push notification, if it's not handled, if the deep linking is not handled, it will just open the app. If deep linking is there, it will take you to the exact page or the group or the events calendar. Okay. So that's the concept number one. And the second would be when you share things on like social media or those kind of stuffs. Suppose if you want to share a meeting URL, I mean, sorry, even URL or something in a social media, or you want to send it.
It is possible in Gmail also, Milan. You can send it via
Yeah.
email.
Yeah, so if you want to send it via mail or Skype or something, if user is on the device, when he clicks that link, it will open the app to the exact page, intended page. Okay,
Sure,
it will be just a URL. it will be something like https our app name / something something. Okay, but upon clicking that, it will take you to that exact group or the exact event, like that. So these are the basic possibilities of deep linking. So
Well,
in
that's
order to
on banner
handle,
ads all the
yeah,
time, isn't it? Like
sorry.
if you're looking at a pair of boots on a website and you click on the banner, it's going to take you to that specific pair of boots on the e-commerce site. So that's basically a deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Suppose you are sharing a product info on Amazon or something.
Yeah.
When you click on that, it will directly open that product page, right?
Right.
In the app or in the website or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually deep linking.
Yeah.
It will take you to the exact page.
Sure, it's no problem. It's done all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the concept about deep linking, so that user won't have to manually go to that page, find and go to that page. Suppose if I'm getting a reminder for, a push notification for an event or something, I don't have to open the app and manually drill down and go there to view that event. Just on clicking that event, the app can be opened up to that specific page. So that's the it's kind of a user experience, better user experience stuff. So, and coming back to Ajish, it won't affect our development in future, but the thing is, like, we will have push notifications set up for many kind of like events or many kind of stuffs. So we'll have to handle all those stuffs in deep linking. So I think it won't affect our development purpose.
Okay, so that gives us a little bit of cushion on deciding whether this should go in the first phase or whether we can wait till we start off on the next.
Yes. Let John and Greg decide on that, and if it's needed, then we can include that in our scope and SRS.
Understood.
Yeah.
So leave it to you, John and Greg. Do you think you need another meeting for going in detail on this, or are we good so far?
I don't know, Greg. Did you get enough of an idea of whether that's something?
I totally understand what that stuff is. We use it all the time on anything. If you want to send somebody to your specific LinkedIn page, for example, you're using a deep link. So yeah, I get it. That's it's like Web 101. That's not hard.
Yes, the concept actually is more in that mobile app, because the website actually has that links /// you can directly go to that link, right? But for a mobile app, yeah, that's where the deep linking concept actually comes.
All right, so let's talk about that, because that's I don't know how that deep linking works on a app that would be different from a site. So yeah, I'd like a primer on that one.
Yeah.
Milad, you can add one more point. Suppose the user doesn't have a mobile app installed on it, and he's receiving a deep link.
Okay.
That point you are missing.
Yes. Suppose that's another scenario where the user doesn't have their mobile app, and that's a scenario with the links which we generate or share through social media or Skype. Suppose John is sharing an link for an event or something through Skype to Greg, and Greg doesn't have the app installed. Okay, then that link will automatically open the App Store product page. The app page for our app, UBsports, App Store or Play Store. Then the user can install, and upon the first launch, it will take you to that link. That page, event. That's also an added benefit for using deep linking and branches, all those stuff.
Yeah. So, I believe it sounds like Greg's going to want that right away. So there's some question about whether it fits in the scope. Can you guys identify the impact to the scope, and if it's something that's considered out of scope based on the original estimate and timing?
Sure. We'll get back to you on that, John.
Yeah.
I'll with Milind on how much of how much of extra work that's going to take. And
Yeah, and I think it's more specific for Greg and I to decide exactly how frequently that's going to be used between the first launch of the apps and the next major update. You know, if there's only a 1 month change, I'm not so sure that it's a big deal right away. So we need to understand kind of the impact of that, which will help us once we get a better feel for what we think the urgency is to have it.
Okay.
Okay.
gotcha.
So the question URI is just to have the URI connected to a link, so that's what it does. It digs in deeper to the app when you're led to it from someplace else.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Greg.
There's that uniform resource identifier, the URI.
Yeah.
Isn't that what that has to be placed on content or a link to content that's deeper in the app?
Yeah. Yes. Actually, URI is supported by Apple also now. It's called Universal Links for now. But if you are depending on third-party platforms like Branch and all, they can generate a URL for your app itself, and it can have we can configure it in many ways. Suppose one of the advantages I told you before, it can redirect to the store page of your app if the user hasn't installed the app. So, and it can even have a product page designed like go to App Store or something with your UBsports background, or all those kind of stuffs can be done if you are depending on the third-party service like Branch. In normal ways also we can do it in both iOS and Android. But I think it's better for the user experience to use Branch for this deep linking purposes, because
Okay.
it allows us to have a number of options to configure the way in which our URL works.
Okay.
You know, Greg, here's where it's going to have like a real life impact. I created an event for my group,
Right.
and I share that with you. Okay. If you have the app installed and we have deep linking on, it'll take you, the link will automatically open the app. It'll request that you log in unless you've stayed logged in. And after logging in, it'll take you to a specific page, which is presumably the content you were discussing in whatever I sent the link with.
Right. Okay.
If you don't have deep linking, the person will click the link. It'll either open the app or ask them to install the app, at which point they log in and they get the standard homepage of the app.
Right.
And they would then require to kind of hit their notifications to say, oh, here's the notification of the event that you just sent me the link for.
That's probably like 5% as effective as having a deep link.
Yeah, I wouldn't put money on that percentage, but but the key is for you and me to think about the timing, if between the first and second release, and whether this needs to be a first phase thing. I don't see us necessarily doing a whole lot more than general promotion of the site and getting people to sign up in the first couple months. So that's a conversation that you and I have to have while these guys determine the impact to the scope, if any.
Yeah.
So that's where we'll leave it. We both have a to-do for that.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
have to dig into that, because it seems to me to be important, but you may have a different feeling on that.
Okay, moving on. There's nothing mentioned in the spec about localization. And although everything is going to be, basically US English at this point, the site should be built to support the addition of additional localization packages in the future. That doesn't mean that every piece of content on the site needs to support that. But as you define the metadata for the pages that are generated, things of that nature, the validation based across people that have different, keyboards, things of that nature, we should be able to easily transform and add those things in the future. So we don't have a specific need for localization now, but it is something that we are going to need to do in the future. So anything you can do to, I'd like to include it somehow in the spec that the foundation for localization will be considered when designing the site.
Yeah, support for multiple languages, right? So yeah, it's a good idea to add that provision right when we are designing the portal.
Okay.
I think
John,
we are early enough in the development stage to add this, right?
yeah, right. John, do you want the labels also to be translated, like the labels we are or the text we are using for the front end of the site, like the sign in, first name, last name, password, everything. You want all those things to be support localization?
Yes.
Okay, and you want them to be manageable from the admin side also, right?
Manageable from the what?
From the admin dashboard, like manage labels. The point is that I am planning to implement the localization by using the database. So you can easily manage those labels from the admin side itself. So if you edit any changes to the first name and you change it to suppose to the full name, it will immediately reflect on the website as well as on the mobile apps. So all the labels to the mobile apps will be sent from the admin dashboard, from the database actually.
Did you get that, Greg?
Yeah, I think, yes, I'd like to be able to do that, but that does add a good bit extra upfront, I would think.
You will have to bring in a small module like localization or a label module to the admin side. I think it will add around 2 to 3 days of work, because we will be having a list or a grid system where it displays all the labels that are currently present on the system. Then you need to enable, disable, or update, add all those screens. It will not take that much of an effort, but because we are already going to design the list for displaying the users and screens for displaying the details of the users and all, we can reuse those things. But we will have to implement this localization label support to all the core system.
And this is the time to do it now as opposed to retrofitting it later.
Exactly. If
Yes,
you are retrofitting it later, means we will have to go to each and every module to change the hard-coded labels to this database generated labels. That is actually a tedious work.
Let's prepare for that now, and let's do it that way now.
Agreed.
Okay. Yeah, John, we can do it.
Okay, the next thing is form data when users are filling out any of our forms for anything. I want to make sure, and I don't know if this would go in the software spec or more in a technical spec, but we want to make sure that all data is validated on both sides of the submission, on the client side and on the server side. There's certain types of things that you can't validate on the client side. For example, to check if an email address is unique. you know, that type of thing. You have to kind of pass it off to the database and do a query. But where possible, the validation should be done on both sides, client side, and then before submitting to the database. And the criteria used, or regular expressions, or however that particular each data element is being validated, the validation criteria should be the same where possible on the client and the server side. You know, for example, you don't want the server side to reject an invalid character, for example, but not have it rejected on the client side.
Right, syntax. That's, yeah, they do it on, like, if you put in your email address, they will have a notice that your email isn't appropriate until you have the @ in there and a .com or .something at the end. So I'm sure, you know, that kind of stuff is necessary. But also you have the validation when you validate the email and send an email back to the person who's trying to join. So that's a whole different set of actions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys don't have any questions. I mean, you agree with that, I would believe. That's kind of a normal practice, right?
Yes, John.
I would hope. Okay. The next item is that we want to make sure that we can use custom error pages so that the error pages follow the display of our site.
You mean the 400 errors, the 500 errors and all?
Yes, correct.
Yes. Actually, we have designed the 404 and 500 pages today. And I think Ajish will show you the screens. Ajish?
Well, we can see the screens later. I just want to make sure that we can use custom error pages that will navigate someone back into the site and is more friendly and it looks like the rest of the site.
Yeah, sure. That we have already taken care of.
Yeah, it's been taken care of. I'll be able to show that to you after end of this discussion.
Yes.
Okay. The next couple of things are a little more fundamental in regards to testing and browser support. We haven't really identified or discussed, you know, what browsers are going to be supported, you know, how many different browsers and devices and what combinations are you going to be doing your testing with. So I know that we have to have that discussion and we'll have to level set that. And I've kind of identified what I consider the most basic supported versions. Now, whether we actually test on every combination of those or we pick a select few devices and browsers to test with can be determined later. But we'll have to have that discussion. I don't know if there's something that we want to put in the spec that identifies a base set, a general concept of what browsers we're supporting, that it's always going to be the most recent version of the common browsers on common devices. I know how challenging QA is when it comes to the various devices and software that's on them and the OS versions and everything else. So I don't want to get too outrageous in what we do for testing. So if you guys can incorporate something into the SRS that defines what your normal support mechanism is, and we can go from there.
Okay. Yeah, Ajish, we'll have to talk to the QA team and do this. We can update that thing also on the SRS.
Are these the main four browsers that are being used around on the web right now? Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari? Or are there more?
There are, but you don't necessarily go through testing with those.
Right.
And I'm more concerned about the website display on mobile devices.
Yeah.
You know, and Greg, we'll have to kind of think about whether a tablet computer should be considered a desktop device or whether it should be considered a mobile device on its own. So, you know, there's ways that you design this. This would affect wireframes, the layouts, and the designs of the pages.
Right.
So it is something we kind of have to talk about. But I think, you know, inevitably we're going to be developing this, and 3 weeks before we launch the website, you know, Apple or Google is going to come out with a brand new OS and new phones, and things aren't going to look quite as nice, and that's inevitable. So, you know, even the use of terminology such as the latest version means that what you intend to deliver in a couple weeks might not meet that. So I'm not looking for specific language in the SRS, but more of a concept of how we're going to address the devices in the browsers as far as application support.
Yeah, John, I would recommend that we come up with a browser and operating system support metrics, which will mention the version of the browsers, as well as the operating system they work on. The only challenge that's going to be that needs to be addressed in a more elaborate manner is the Android operating system, because it's got a plethora of devices out there in the market. So it's quite difficult to test each and every one of them with the different screen formats. But we could use a tool like Browser Stack or something where we can run the website and see how much compatible the application is against each of these browsers. And it's not very expensive to do that. I believe we can try that method, which will put us in a safe zone.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, that'll catch, you know, 90+% of everything that you would see, you know, cross compatibility stuff. But if you guys can talk to your QA team and kind of get what is, like, when they go to test the software, both the mobile apps and the desktop site and stuff like that, what's their standard practice? What devices and browsers do they use as a norm? And if you can provide that to us, you know, incorporate that into the SRS, if that's not going to work for us, we may ask you to add a few extra devices or combinations or something like that. And if that changes the scope of what QA's and the QA team's involvement is, then so be it. We'll have to address it at that time. But I think going forward is find out what your standard practice is. What is it when you deliver them that you can say it was tested in?
Understood.
And then we'll go from there.
Got it. So we'll add that.
Yeah, the next item, and this is more of a style guide kind of thing. Maybe the SRS should identify that a style guide will be developed and maintained for the site. But most importantly for me is I want to make sure that as we go forward that the fonts that are chosen for the site, which I don't know that we've specifically chosen any typefaces yet, but it should be an accessible font. And I've listed 3 specific ones that I know are accessible and they would fit cross-platform, et cetera. And secondly, that when the site is designed, no more than 3 typefaces are ever used on a single page. It's very rare to even see 3, but I want to make sure that we don't have things in too many typefaces. That's an old marketing trick that I've learned.
Thank you. So Yeah, we'll consider. I mean, we'll just add that, include that in the our style guide.
Um, there was no mention on the use of cookies. We haven't really talked about cookies much, but I'd like to make sure that the use of persistent cookies is minimized. We don't want to leave it that much data on the client machines and rely on that simply because, private browsing and the other tools on desktops and mobile devices clean that stuff out. So it's not totally reliable. So I'd like to minimize the use of persistent cookies.
Okay.
Additionally, and this might be something we want to mention in the spec, is that the use of cookies should be well documented as far as what the technical team has done to use cookies, even if they're transient and they're just session cookies or what have you, if you leave cookies out there. Because we will need to incorporate that into our privacy policy or other
Yes.
documentation on this.
Binu, what's a usual practice?
Ajish, if we are going for a REST API implementation, the usage of cookies and the session storage will be minimal because we will be having everything on stateless concept. So we will be having only the default cookies that what the browser or the session will be supporting. We will not be going for a persistent cookie, and the usage of cookies will be minimal.
So can we add a privacy, security and privacy section to the SRS and include this detail into that section?
Yes, sure. Yes, sure. We can also have a section where what all type of cookies and what values we will be storing in there. We can add that also through the SRS.
Great.
The next thing is the default URL for the site. Of course, everything should be encrypted. We'll have a certificate on the site, etc. All requests that come into the server that are not using that default URL should be rewritten to use the default URL.
John, you mean the canonical redirections? Like suppose you don't have the HTTP or www part, it will be redirected to the http://www the UBsports. Everything will be redirected to that page only. Did you
Yeah,
mean that
and it should,
redirection?
if you come into a deep link, right, it should
Yes.
rewrite that and redirect you, but it should still go to whatever page you intended to go to.
Yes, got it. It will be there, John.
Something for you guys to know too about that, we'll have a certificate on the site. We will probably be using a wildcard certificate. This will come up a little bit later as we define what DNS is and things, but since we have a wildcard certificate, I don't know if you guys ever have used them before, but you can only go one subdomain lower. So my certificate might be valid for star.ubsports.com. And that would work on anything that has only one subdomain or one host name, like www, et cetera. If I were to do event or www.event.ubsports.com, the wildcard certificate will not support that because it now has two subdomains or two levels of your host name. So that's more for your information going forward. So it would seem to me that the host names and the server portion of the URL would be not something that's relevant to the functioning of the application, but I just want to make sure you guys know that that's how we intend to set our server up with the certificates.
Just a question, John. Is it possible to request an additional layer to the certificate, like star.ubsports.com?
That I'm not sure about. I've never posed that question. It seems to me it would be challenging to have both portions that way, but you could probably get something like star.event.ubsports.com
Mm-hmm.
or star.app.ubsports.com, something of that nature. You could get a wild card. I'd have to look into that to be certain.
Binu, do you envision any kind of additional level of subdomains needed for the application? For example, you go to www.ubsports.com and then you sign in as a user, and it takes you to say portal or app.ubsports.com. And from there, do you think that there would be further redirection to like something.app.ubsports.com? Is it a possibility?
Ajish, right now we have not planned for such a subdomain redirections. What I was planning is like we'll be having, suppose you are going for an app, it will be ubsports.com/events, like that. Only using the URL part, I was planning to redirect
So
instead of
John,
going for a subdomains.
got
But
you.
Greg has one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mhm. But in the previous meeting, Greg had mentioned that he will be planning to support a concept of stores. So if they require a subdomain like the stores.ubsports, that also has to be planned.
Yeah. So that's pretty much workable in this scenario of wildcard certificate. So, John, I don't think we have too many constraints with respect to adding one more level to the wildcard. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that was just a random thought that I had as we were talking about the domain and the URL. So I want to make sure you guys know that that's how we're planning it. In the event that, like in the case of the store example, if we were to have shoes.store.ubsports or rackets.store.ubsports.com, we could handle that by getting an additional wildcard certificate for sure. For the sports sub, or for the store subdomain. So good, as long as you guys are aware of that. The last point that I had was in regards to the responsive layouts, which I think is mentioned in the SRS somewhere. How do you, I guess my question has to do with the breakpoints, which allows for different devices. And the best practice that I've used was always based on the device width, the viewport width. And there was always a decision to be made about how many different breakpoints do you have for different layouts. And so this goes to the templates and everything else that you guys are building and the wireframes. So my question is, what is your intention on handling responsiveness? An example of 3 breakpoints would be one for, phones that are in a portrait or landscape mode. Another might be for larger format mobile devices, such as large format phones or tablets, and then a desktop view. So in some cases, you might consider, a tablet over a certain width to be the same as your desktop view. So what's your normal practice on the breakpoints? And can we incorporate some more specific language in the SRS around the responsive design?
Okay, John, for implementing the responsive designs, what we are using is the Bootstrap grid framework. I'll have to check with the design team on how many breakpoints or how many device resolutions they are supporting by default. I think what they are doing is they'll be checking for a normal mobile devices like the 5-inch versions, both the vertical and horizontal orientations. Then they will check for the 7-inch as well as the 10-inch tablet devices, and then for the laptops and for the desktops.
Okay, I guess my question is that when you build templates for the pages, the page layout definitions themselves and potentially the wireframes, will there be different ones for very narrow, small devices versus the desktop?
Has to be.
Ideally, it should be different.
Okay, so what is your plan now? I know that you've been working on the wireframes. I mean, are we expecting different layouts? You know, different device, different sizes where the viewport does vary on smaller devices and larger devices. You know, how many different layouts are you going to need to build, or are you planning on using one layout across all of those?
Right now, the design team is working on the desktop or the laptop layouts. Once that is set, we will have to move to the lower devices.
Are you planning on the site being responsive for those smaller devices?
Yes, yes, Greg.
Is that, are they considered
So if-
CSSs or what are they there?
Sorry, Greg, can you repeat again?
The templates that we're using for the pages, that's CSS or what are we using for that?
Yeah, it is CSS. It is based on the Bootstrap and CSS only.
Okay.
Yeah, is there, can you tell me how, like, what's in the current scope? How many different layouts will you have? In other words, if we talk about the breakpoints, like at what point it goes to a different layout where you have to specify your styles completely different for that page?
For that, John, I think I'll have to talk to the design team because I am not that much involved with the design part.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think most of the stuff that I've been involved with in the past has had at least 3 distinct layouts. You know, one for very small devices, one for larger formats and tablets, and one for desktop view. That those are kind of the 3 views that you built for the website. You know, I'm not really talking about the mobile apps themselves at this point, but viewing the website on the different devices in a browser. So is there, you know, what's that number? How many are there? And can we kind of flush that out in the SRS as what's included in the scope?
Sure, John. So that's I'm sure that we will be following the market standards, say mobile phone, a tablet, a laptop, and a large screen, large format.
I think it is 4. I think because the design team was testing with the 4 devices.
Yes, Bino. So let's go back to the design team, get those details, and add
Yes.
it to FRS.
Yeah,
So
sure, Rajesh.
that covers all John's questions. Then let's go to Greg. Agreed on most points except that SMS native notifications. Okay. You wanted it in this build, but you guys are going to discuss and come back to us on that, right? And yeah, so that's the only comment, right, by Greg.
Right. Also, yeah, I think yeah, I'm good there. What about will we make sure that we have metas and tags and all the other SEO functionality in place for that part of it?
How much of SEO support are we adding to the portal? Is that your question? Greg?
Well,
Did-
we do need to have that throughout the site, right?
It has to be SEO friendly.
Well, I
right?
think some of the SEO stuff that we need, one is obviously the friendly URLs, number one.
Right.
Okay.
That's one. Number two, we will be using Google Analytics to track generic page views on every page. We've discussed this before. Maybe that should be in the spec.
Okay. Yeah.
And there will be the need to trigger events in Google Analytics and things of that nature. So in general, every page should load the Google Analytics account ID. One of the things that we did discuss once, I'll remind you now, is we will want to use a different Google Analytics ID in our staging environments, as well as development, anything non-production. So the Google Analytics ID needs to be configurable at a system level, at the environment level. So
Okay.
that way, if our future development has, let's say, a conversion funnel in it, we will want to be able to test the application on our staging environment and be able to look at the analytics that are being tracked to make sure that they're accurate without it affecting the production analytics that are being collected. Maybe this should be in the spec too, to identify that that's an absolute requirement for us. To me, that's just kind of injecting the Google Analytics ID into the scripts that are generated for the page or something like that. So it shouldn't be that big of an issue. That'll allow us to track page views, add custom events in the future when we need to, those kind of things. Other SEO related items, when we're putting the title or a subtitle, a headline or a subheadline on content in the page, we should use the appropriate HTML tags, H1, H2, H3, as opposed to simply using styles to change the font sizes and font weight and things of that nature. That will allow the search engines and the SEO to pick up on those titles and pick up on ultimately the keywords that are necessary to find that content in the search engine. So those are some of the basic SEO things that we're looking for. It's nothing more than what's best practice, but that should all be considered from an SEO perspective.
Yeah. I've just taken notes of whatever we discussed. Let me know if I have missed out anything. But the action plan is to have these changes incorporated into the SRS. Get a sign off from you, Greg and John. That will be kept just for reference. Most of our work will be verbal exchanges. That makes it much faster. But this is document for us to fall back on if there is any confusion with respect to the functionality, right? Yeah. So
Right.
yeah. Uh, let's move on to showing you a few designs that the team did over the week, and then we can split for the day. And uh, I don't think we need to reconvene for an SRS discussion per se, but going forward, we'll have a weekly meeting to discuss the progress of work, and we might be able to demo a few pages for you um, every week and collect your feedback. Right.
Good.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. Let's start with an error screen. Share. You guys able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the customer page that you spoke about, John. Does this look okay?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that the 404 should be so prominent on the page.
Yeah, the page not found is
I
more
think,
important for.
yeah, I mean, I think a 404 is meaningful to most internet savvy people now that they kind of know what that error is. But if for some reason they get a, 405.1 or a 505.11, I mean, the number doesn't mean anything really. So that's too prominent. The content, I think, is something that we may want to modify. Instead of just returning to the home page, we might want to offer them a few other links that are the common pages, or something like that. So we may want to include a link to the contact us, or maybe a site map. I don't think a site map is part of the plan. It's not something we required. I think we ultimately need to generate an XML site map at some point for submission to search engines, but the content, can that be changed later?
Yes, John. The content will be implemented as a label so that you can change it.
Okay. Yeah. Aside from the number being too large, I mean, it's fine. I question that there's no navigation at the top. It would seem that you would just put the normal navigation and header on that page.
Okay.
Unless of course the problem is some issue in the server generating the header or the navigation. There should be some sort of navigation. Maybe not the same navigation that's on the rest of the site, but there should be some basic navigation. And then we wouldn't even necessarily have to change the content, the words on the page.
Binu, are you noting feedbacks?
Those are my thoughts.
Yes, Ajish. Yes, Ajish, I'm noting it.
Great. So we'll redesign it and show it to you once we're ready.
Yeah, and
Thank
I
you,
imagine
John.
the sign-in button would change if they were a logged-in user. That would probably be different.
If that is a logged in user, it will be obviously the logout.
Okay.
I don't know if we want that either.
Yeah, so that's,
We want to log out, or you want to go back to home page?
well, I think it would,
Yes, Greg, that is also possible. Actually, my intention was to toggle that sign in button with sign in, and once the user is logged in, it will be actually changed to sign out.
Yeah, and if you want to link to the homepage, you can make that
Y-
logo a link back to the.
It is already done on the header as well as on the footer. That is already linked to the homepage.
yeah, and I think any other links, I think there needs to be some kind of navigation, maybe not like
Okay.
one of the pop-out menus, but a couple other links across the top, perhaps, or maybe a pop-up menu, you know, the burger menu.
Yeah,
Take
got
you
it,
back to
John.
the home
That we
page,
will.
maybe
That
take you back to the wellness portal, maybe take you back some of those things. There needs to be just some basic navigation back to the main pieces of the site. You know, what pieces
yes,
they
I
are,
got it.
I don't know right now, but
Okay. So that can be
Yes.
determined at a later date if we refine this.
Yeah. So, sorry, Greg. I didn't get that.
Oh, as we're obviously not taking this page and running with it as is. You're going to be increasing the size of the oops page not found, decreasing the size of the 404, and giving us either a pop-up or other links on that page to navigate back to working pages on UBsports.
Right. Right. So,
Right.
Pino has taken note of all feedback that John has given, and we will present you the changes in the next meeting. So this is the home page, right, Binu?
Yes.
You want to zoom in?
This is the home.
Okay. I think we presented this last time.
We added a few sections like the Google Ads, the events and all. Then we removed the iconic menu to a normal text menu in the header section.
Mhm. John, Brad, we can send these over to you for the scrutiny. You can send your feedback in an email or on Slack.
Please do. And the capabilities of these things, I'll sit down with them and determine what the capabilities need to be for each one of those clicks. For example, when you're on the UB Universe and you're looking at the calendar, it would be nice to specify whether you want to see a calendar of local events in the sports that you care about, local events in all sports, your specified, your favorite sports all around the nation, or just events for the groups you belong to, things like that. We should have some kind of a menu for the calendar side of things. You have two ambassador contents. I see the top left, and I think below member content, you also have ambassador content. Below the member content. There has to also be a curated content, which you have right now on the top right, but you also need a video, either the most popular video in all of the UB universe or in the sports that you care about. And that should also be toggleable from the top. It might be also, just two links on top of the video box that one says all of UB Universe or My Sports, so that you can be specific. And that should be remembered from one use of the site to another. So if you want when you send that to me, I'll come back with comments and statements on that.
Sure, Greg. Let me do this. Let me try to share these images using an app called Envision. That'll allow you to specifically point to spots in the design and add your comments right there.
Okay.
So that might be easy for you guys to quickly comment. The same page. It's an older page.
What will the ads be? They're going to be dynamic, so that if you have 3 different ads spaces and we fill them with ads, the content below where the ad belongs would move down. That would be flexible as we get ads, because not all ads are going to be the same size. We have to make sure that we can adjust simply from one ad to another on different web pages in the spots that we have allocated for ads. Some are going to be above the fold, some are going to be below the fold, that kind of stuff.
Bino, is that possible to resize the ad boxes according to the content or ad content?
I think it is possible because this is just a placeholder section, and depending on the content only, the that section will expand or collapse. Let me check with the HTML development team. I think they have started the HTML development for this page, so they will know a better idea. They will have a better idea.
Okay, I think the pages are right.
And I think
catch ads.
I think some of the ad controls though come from our side, Greg, in that you include in the code on the site a callback for a specific ad on the server, and it serves up from what you configure on the ad platform. Like you say that this is